So here's the whole phrase, and then we'll do that a few times. You might want to listen first. It's up to you. I can't hear you, so you could do what you want. Here we go. Just a couple of notes, kind of a summary of what we did last week, or whoever was there. So the beginning, there's a variation. If you go to the A early, the high A, the open string A, and you loop two A's in a row on two up bows. The first one's going to be very light, and then you surge into the second one. And what I usually do is just do that on the fifth bar. So we start off plain. And then the other way. And one other thing I wanted to point out is that the four-note cut, or it's a run, is not played metronomically, and you have a few different ways you can do it. One way that's almost always works is to just run them a little quicker and just wait on the last note before the next beat. You can also do them in pairs, like that. On a slow tune like this, it works. Or you can do 3 in 1. Or but you don't want to go evenly like that. Okay, so let's try that. And in general, all of the rhythms, except for that, should be triplets pretty much. So even though this is a basic thing that people often don't understand about this style, the Cape Breton way of playing Strathspeys, instead of playing 3 to 1 like this one's a little bit harder to give you that idea, but if it's just going, you can hear those triplets, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's not that. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. With a little surge on the up bow. If you get it out, if you sing it, it'll be hi, ha, da, ha, da, ha, da, ha. It won't be dum, da, dum, da, dum, da, ha, da. And you do that the same with the bow. So always go for those triplets when you can, and the snap can be a little snappier if you want. So here's the beginning again. Join. Okay. All right, so the next part starts on the low C sharp and up the scale. Try that together from the C sharp to the E. Here we go. And do that again. Go. And the next part. The C sharp up the scale, and go. And we'll put that together. And same, only you keep going with the triplets from the C sharp. Just try that from the C sharp, and you continue with the triplets, and go. And as I mentioned last week, these triplets shouldn't be exact kind of jig-like triplets, like, but they should vary by threes, like. So you can do them a little faster, like those, like the 4-note cuts, or you can do the first two a little faster, then wait. But just a little bit, so just that they're not, they don't feel too metronomic or too much like a jig, because it's a Strathspey, it's not a jig. So we'll do that again from the C sharp, and go. Again. And here's the whole second part from the low C sharp, and go. First time. Second time. Keep going. Good. And just one more thing, just like there was a variation in the first part with the loop bowing, up-driven bow. The same thing in the second part, you can go, instead of, you can reverse the first two notes, and you can do the up-driven bow on the E. Try that a few times. Again. Once again. And again, I would put that just on the 5th bar, just when it comes back. So let's do the second part, whole part again, and this time we'll start with the plain version. And then halfway through, we'll switch it. Here we go, from the C sharp, and go. Switch it. And then when you're going to go back, you do that on the snap at the end, and when you go on, you don't. Or if you go on to another tune, for example. All right, so here's the whole tune. Here, I'll give you an introduction. And play. Okay, we'll be playing that a few more times later on. So let's review the reel. All right, so the reel is Miss Robertson by Robert McIntosh. And start with the F sharp, and there we go, together. And again. Time. And then you do it again with a different ending. just from the E. Here we go, and again. One more time. Now we'll do the whole thing. Again. Okay, the second part starts up on the A, the G sharp pickup, and just going to go down the scale, of course, alternating with the open A. And then answers. Okay, so let's try all of that together. I'll play it one more time, and we'll just do it a few times. Again. One more time. Okay, so you do the first part of that again, going on. Now you go all the way down the scale. Just do that. And then the tongue twister from a G natural to a G sharp. From the G sharp, let's try that a few times, or you can listen one more. And play. And again. Let's do the whole second part. From the G sharp, here we go. One more time. Beginning. Second half. Nice. A couple of things about the basic stroke for the reels to start with. When somebody comes to me and says, you know, how do you play this music? Depending on what their background is, there's going to be, you know, some different, you know, different things that I'm going to see. So what I see for example, for Baroque players, and they want to lighten up the parts of the beat that are not the main notes. So they want to go like, kind of a thing and have that kind of a brush stroke. So, right, kind of doing it in half bars. So instead, okay, so first to say that another thing that people do sometimes, especially classical players, but even some traditional players, they'll have just a nice back and forth motion, but it pretty even like this. Or they might put a lilt to it. But it's not quite a Cape Breton sound yet. And of course, the classical players might do some other fancy things. That kind of a thing. And another thing that especially classical players will want to do, or Baroque players as well, they'll want to sort of go to a specific place in that kind of very musical way, but maybe not quite this kind of musical. So all of that has to kind of change a little bit. The timing is going to be quite monolithic, really. So the beats are going to be just very solid. So you're going to have your foot going, hopefully, in a rocky motion. Heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe. So as you're going along, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe. And that's going to change this monolithic back and forth into something that sounds like this. Instead of without that feeling of the timing kind of moving in your body like that, it's going to sound more like this. But really what I want to get to is just how you connect the notes and how you have these, so we're in the key of A, you have these little pops and sizzles, that's what I call them. And that's something that I think is a little bit different than almost any style that I've I've really seen. So what I mean by pops and sizzles is instead of doing an accent like this, right? See how much bow that takes for me to stop it? Right? I used half the bow just sort of making an accent. So instead of that, I'm just going to do this. Just that. I'm just going to pop with a little grunt. Huh. But I'm not stopping it because there's nothing to stop. I'm just going to give it a huh. So. And then what happens after that is just nothing. Or maybe the sizzle part. Right? And I don't know if you can see, my right hand is doing little energy zaps at the beginning, from one into the other. So it's not just down, right? It's from the up into the down, right? And then from down into the up. You hear those, the bubbles? You hear the bubbles? See if you can get some bubbles going. But you never thought you were going to do bubbles. And then if you do it a little faster, has anybody ever heard Jerry Holland play? He's unfortunately no longer with us. I see some nods. He had this beautiful sound, and he often used just about that much bow. Very sweet sound, very concentrated sound, but boy, did he do the pop and sizzle thing. I think he got that somewhat from Winston Fitzgerald. And then the older style of playing has the same idea, but instead of that condensed instead of that more condensed kind of sound, they'll just broaden it out like this. So it's the same idea. So instead of this, again, but it'll just be a little bit pushed. The bow will be pushed more, but it still has those same pops. So it's not doing this, but it's doing this. Do you hear the ha, ha, pa, 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 pa? And that's different from, once again, different from accenting, but it's that's my particular kind of specialty or favorite kind of sound, more like a Donald McClellan kind of a sound, or a Donald Angus Beaton, all kinds of those great older players playing that kind of more, a little bit rougher kind of a sound, but it's really pushing the bow and playing a lot with the rhythm between the pairs of notes, either slightly, fast slow or slow fast the other way, instead of doing it the same, like more like that. So that you have your choice of what kind of flavor you want to lean towards, more of a clean, more of a Jerry Hollands kind of a style, or if you want to go further back and get kind of the more kind of slightly more raw sound, but I think has a lot of character to it. In either case, though, it's the same principle of these. This is the thing that's hard for people to get. It's just this basic pops and sizzles. In between the pops and sizzles at either end is just basically a coasting, and then you have to get into the next one. Sometimes I'll call that a whip bow, because you're whipping from one direction into the other. So you could practice that as well. You can practice a whip bow, especially for the Strathspeys, by the way, from the down into the up, doing that triplet. The Nabu Coal Mine Strathspey is a good one for that. Just let it sizzle in between. Okay, yeah, and I'll just say one more time about putting that into the body. So you have the heel toe happening, the tapping happening in your foot, and then ideally going to go through your gut and your spine, which will hopefully be doing this. So your shirt will be wrinkling and unwrinkling as you go up and down with the heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe. And that'll take this basic stroke, very even and it's almost very zen, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. There's no 1, 2, 3, 4, any of that going on. And then you'll get that into the body.
try doing rounds and round with pop and sizzle plus foot tapping a few times.
Okay, yeah. And I don't know if you're thinking slow or fast, but the foot, I mean, I guess I could show you my foot, but I'll go back here, you can see. There we go. So I got socks on with stripes, so that should help. I don't know if you can hear that and see that. So you can do it that way, kind of more close to the floor, or you can do that, which is you're sort of pushing off and you're in the air and you kind of slap back with your toe on the other way. Right? In either case, it's heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe. We'll just try that. And for extra credit, if you want, you can even add a little syncopation in the left. But you don't have to. Or you can just keep it more close to the floor like that. I'm just rocking back and forth. Heel, toe, and that sounds like this. Now you see what I'm doing. Let's just try that again, just a little bit slower, so you can kind of maybe think a little bit, get that going in case you're having trouble with that. I know I did for the first 3 years or so. So it might take a little bit, but it's a little bit like, patting your head and rubbing your tummy. But yeah, so you see that the heel toe going. And let's do it a little bit slower, maybe about this. So heel, toe. I can't talk and chew gum at the same time. Here we go. From the heel, here we go, and heel, toe. Heel, toe. Heel, toe. Second part. With pops and sizzles. A little faster now. Faster. Heel, toe. One of the things that often gets in the way of all that motion, you see when you have, you get the foot going and you've got this thing hopefully going, through your spine and through your gut, feeling it, the timing in that. What you need to do is not have motion in the fiddle and the neck too much to get in the way. You don't want to have it too stiff, but you want this to be really solid, so you can just look straight down the fiddle and kind of concentrate that way. But you don't have any kind of motion like this, especially this. That's going to get in the way. And I'll tell you the main reason for that is that these very pops and sizzles. As soon as you're doing this, it just confuses everything, and then you want to go back to just kind of back and forth, and you go instead of. It's hard to do both at the same time. So if you want that basic stroke of that really popped and sizzly kind of sound, I really suggest that you get used to just holding the fiddle just nice and solid and in one place, and let everything kind of move together from like the shoulders up, you know. Right? Okay. The second part of this, just those rocking motions between the E and A. Some people like to do that backwards like this. It's very much, in a way, it's a more natural motion for your arm, and you can try that. But there's something that will be more difficult, and that is to hear again the evenness, the liveliness, the aliveness of both the up bow and the down bow, which you really need in this style. So instead of you might go, if you dig into the up bow, it's okay, but I don't hear the same liveliness of every stroke as. And that's the more condensed version, or if you want to do the opening up the bow a little bit. Same idea. Another thing I'm doing is when I'm digging into the top note, I'm letting the open A play as well. I'm going. So again, that won't really be maybe as obvious to do if you do opposite bowing. You could do it still, it just doesn't have the same pop and sizzle. So. And you can really use the leverage from crossing the string to bite in a little bit extra on the E string. But don't forget the A gets something too. So you're not doing ta da ta da ta da. You're like ta da ta da ta da ta da.
When you're focusing on the pop and sizzle, it almost looks as though your bow hold changes.
Oh.
Is that the case, or is it just kind of an illusion?
I have a feeling that when I want to show the pop and sizzle, like specific, like make it a little bit more obvious, then I will, maybe take some fingers off. Again, a little bit more like Winston Fitzgerald or Jerry Holland. You really have more of that kind of a sizzly. But you should be able to do it even,
even with the normal,
with all the
down.
Yeah, all the fingers down.
Okay.
And when I'm really digging into the string, I almost never use the fourth finger. It's only when this is I call this kind of a spoken language, musical language. I think other types of styles, for example, Irish music, or in the classical world, I think Romantic era music, it's more of a sung musical language. And this is very spoken with lots of syncopations. And so that's why you really do need that fourth finger available so that you can speak a little bit with more enunciating.
You mean your pinky?
So, but when you're just kind of keeping it on the string a little bit more, then I'll take off some of the fingers, and especially if I want it especially kind of popped and sizzly. But there, see on my fingers, my fourth finger is ready to go. Or if I want to just speak in that way, with a kind of a skipped stroke. Why don't we play through these two tunes, and just twice each, and with now when we're putting the Strathspey into the reel, we get to play with that wonderful moment in between. So the very end of the Strathspey is going to kind of change modes into a reel, the feeling. So the Strathspey is just, go back to my chair here, is just going to be heel all the time on every stroke and every beat. So it's going to be like that. And then the reel, of course, changes to the heel toe, like that. But it doesn't necessarily speed up. So you can go 1, 2, 3, 4. You might be thinking more like 1, 1, 1, 1, and then into the reel, I didn't change any tempo. It's still the same speed, and then you might gradually change it. So like this at the end. You see, so there's that moment where it changes, but only slightly. So you're finishing up. And here we are at the very end, and that's when you start playing the reel. You see that as heel toe. So that's the first part. You change to the reel a little bit early with your foot. At the very end, very last 2 beats of the Strathspey, let's say. It could change depending on how fast the Strathspey is going. But here's the other part. The beginning of the reel is like a Strathspey. So instead of right away, it might be a little bit. All right, so I'll come back over here as you can hear a little bit better. But I'm going to be going with the Strathspey, the heel, heel, heel. And then here I'm changing to a reel with my foot, but my bow hasn't gotten the message yet. So it might be still going instead of, right? So just try that at the beginning of the reel. Again. So now listen to the end of the Strathspey into the reel. And now I'm into the reel. Okay? Let's try that together again. From the end of the Strathspey. Here we go. And play. Heel, heel. Change. Okay, so we're just going to do one time each of Lord Alexander Gordon Strathspey, and then through that little bit of magic, we'll go into Miss Robertson Reel. Are you ready? Here's your introduction. Here we go. not too fast. Pops and sizzles. Right?
When we're going heel toe on the reel,
Yeah.
does the toe land on beats 1 and 3 or 2 and 4?
I'm glad you asked that just to make sure we get that right.
Yeah.
The heel is always the main beat. So on the Strathspey, it's on Strathspey. It's one. All the beats, all the quarter notes in the Strathspey are important. 1, 1, 1, 1.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's really 1, 2, 3, 4. Always on the heel. So then, of course, the first one on the reel is also the heel because you've been going. So it's
So
heel,
1
toe.
and 3 are the heels,
Exactly.
and 2 and 4 are the toes.
Trip to Mabber Ridge one time.
But you need to do everything. Oh yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
that one.
because that's a kind of it's repeated within itself because it's got a variation, but the variation is almost the same as the tune. So it's 4 parts. And then after that, we're going to play the one that we were just playing, Lord Alexander Gordon Strathspey. Then we're going to go back to Mabou Coal Mines. And then we're going to go to the other page. Huey Rory, Miss Sliles, Strathspey, and Lady Erskine. So the first 3 of that page. And then we're going to go back and continue with Sandy McIntyre's trip to Boston and finish up with Miss Robertson. Here's the introduction. Trip to Mabber Ridge. Third part. Lord Alexander Gordon. Here we go. pitfalls. Part of the fun is in putting together the tunes, right? So, I mean, I put this together this way, but of course for the sheets of music that I've prepared, I put them together another way. And really, once you get, a couple of dozen or so tunes under your belt, you should try to mix and match and figure out, different ways of putting them together. The main thing is that you're going to start with, slow airs or marches, then go to the slower Strathspeys if you have them, like Lord Alexander Gordon, so then the faster Strathspeys like Miss Lyle, and then into the reels, and you can, as long as you stay on the same home note, in this case A, you can mix and match the different modes, major, Dorian, and Mixolydian, as you want. There we go. Trip to Marble Ridge. Bye.